Well, hey, it's the month of June, and it's time for our market update. And I feel like a grandfather sitting out here by the fire doing this market report. But I think you're going to love what we've got this month. The month of May was somewhat of a surprise for the Calgary market. We're going to walk you through some of the stats here on this video, and I think you're going to find it very, very interesting as to what has happened. And I'm going to give you a couple of predictions on what I think is going to happen into the month of June and beyond. So let's just start with what happened with our total sales. Now, we were down 15.51% in total volume sales, which doesn't sound great, but there's a reason for that, and we'll get into that in a second. And so far, year to date, we're down about 12%. So it's not been, as good of a year for 2026 as 2025 if you look at the market overall. But the overall stats don't tell the entire picture. So that's why we have to look at this data really carefully. Now, the good news is this. This is a big deal. New listings are down 12.69%. Because it would be a disaster if we were down in sales volume and we had higher listing inventory. That would just make it worse, and that would be a real strong buyer's market. Inventory right now for the month of May was actually only down 0.12% from year over year. That's good. Interestingly enough, though, people always ask me, but if there's more inventory or if the sales volume is lower, can I beat down the seller on their asking price? And interestingly enough, we're still seeing strong sale price to list price. It's 98.27%. Now, just keep in mind, some of those properties did have a price reduction before they sold, and that would be taken off of the price reduction price, not the original sale price, okay? Just keep that in mind. Now, our benchmark price is also down at $570,000. That's down 3% from last year. And that might not sound great, but here is why this is happening, just so you understand it. You have probably noticed, if you've been watching the condo market, the condominiums have struggled in 2026. And these stats I'm giving you, they're blended with the condos. The apartment condos have brought down the entire market. And that's why you have to be very careful when you look at these stats, that you look at each segment of the market. And you'll see that there's other segments of the market that are actually doing quite well, namely detached houses. But let's move over to this chart right here first before we get into that. And you'll see by my arrow, you notice that on the red line, this is our year over year benchmark price change. So you can see as we've come in from, all the way back to 2024, we've seen slowly overall softening in the pricing. And again, but that's mainly the condos that have brought that down. It really hasn't affected all segments of the market. And you notice in the blue area here, that is the levels of inventory. And you can see if you go back all the way to 2011, and you can see that where we are as far as inventory levels go, we're touching on areas just before COVID as far as our volume of inventory that we do have. It would be better if you wanted to have a seller's market, obviously, if some of these inventory levels started to drop. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But don't panic. These levels are not crazy. If you look actually over all the way back to 2011, it's not like we're, having severe high volume of inventory like we had in 2020 when COVID hit. So nothing too much to worry about there. Now, let's move over here and we're going to look at detached houses. And you notice right here, our listing absorption rate. This gives us a good temperature gauge of where we are as far as a buyer's market or a seller's market. And you can see we're right in there in a balanced market, meaning that 40.88% of the properties listed in the detached section sold. And you might think, well, that's not such a great number. That's actually a very good number. It's considered more of a balanced market when 40.88 sell. Because I'm going to tell you, the biggest reasons why people don't sell their detached house right now is they're just asking too much money. We see that all the time. There's always a percentage of people that just want to list more than their property is worth for a variety of reasons. And believe me, I've heard it all. I'm moving to Vancouver. The house prices there are too much money. I need to get more money for my house here. I got 10 grand on my credit card. I got to put more of a higher price for my house because my credit card debt's high. You know, I've heard every excuse in the book as to why they want to list too high. But please don't ever forget, if you're a buyer, the greatest fear you have is paying too much for a house. And as a seller, the greatest fear you have is selling it for too low. So that's what creates the market. If the fears of both parties line up, then a house actually sells. But if you do it as far as what your asking price is because of the money that you need, chances are, even in a market like this, you're just not going to sell. So you've got to be mindful. Proper pricing is actually part of the marketing. So you can see now our benchmark price is $747,800, and that's up a little bit from April, and we're down slightly at 2.41% from May of 2025. So you can see the detached housing sector is doing quite well. And it usually does in Calgary because the average person would love to own a detached home. We're just not that strong condo market, that Vancouver has or Toronto, even though Toronto is suffering a little bit right now too. So there's the hard numbers: 2,916 properties listed, 1,192 have sold. So that's pretty good, averaging 28 days on the market. Now here's my favorite chart right here, and this is the market distribution. So you can see the sweet spot for a detached house right now is $600,000 to $700,000. 23.95% of the market. Almost 1/4 of the entire market in Calgary would love to buy a home between $600,000 and $700,000. And you'll see a real close second, $700,000 to $800,000. Now, as you see, as these prices continue to move up, you can see how it won't be long. And trust me on this, we're not climbing like we were in 2023 and 2024, but we are still climbing. And 700 to 800 at some point, and I don't know if it'll happen next year or the year after, but that's going to take first place when it comes to market distribution in Calgary. So people always ask me, is this the right time to buy a house? I always say the same thing. The best time was 5 years ago. The second best time, it's right now. It's that simple. Now, I love looking at the luxury homes. And, luxury is pretty much, for Calgary, anything over $1 million would be considered luxury in most cases. And you'll see 1 million to 1,500,000. That's 9.88% of the market. And that just goes to show we have a strong market here in Calgary. There are people that are willing to buy homes, a lot of homes over $1 million. I mean, 460 have sold so far this year. So that's a pretty strong market. And there's no reason to think that that's going to stop anytime soon. All right, let's move on to looking at semi-detached. And it's a really similar story. 36.59%. That's a really strong absorption rate. It's a balanced market, averaging 691,100. And that is up 0.13% from April of 2026, down only 0.96% from May of last year. So that's a pretty strong market. And if you move all the way down here and we look at how many there are listed, 593 listed, 217 have sold. That's strong. Only 36 days on average to sell the property, so it doesn't take too long to sell one of these. Now, market distribution, sweet spot, $500,000 to $600,000. I'm always interested in this. Detached was 6 to 7, 5 to 6, just on average about $100,000 less, and you can get yourself into a semi-detached. And you know what? There's some really nice semi-detached homes available in Calgary right now. And I'm going to tell you something, a lot of newer construction has got some detached or semi-detached homes that have some really good value. And I have also been helping some people buy brand new construction, especially the ready to move in homes. And we'd give some great advice to people in working with the builder on that. Should always use someone like us to help you with that, because just remember, the builder works for the builder. we work for you, and we can always point out things that you should know in working with the builder. The contracts that they use, they're a little bit complicated. They do kind of favor the builder as well. So we can give some great advice on navigating that, and it doesn't cost you anything extra because the builder loves to work with agents like us. But there's some real good value right now in that $500,000 to $600,000 range if you're interested in a semi-detached. But the other thing I find super interesting is that 1 million to 1.5. I mean, 115 of these have sold this year, and it just goes to show the inner city, very popular. If you've driven around anything in the inner city this year, you'll notice a lot of construction is going on, still a pretty good demand for these semi-detached. And I got to tell you, they're tricked out. I mean, I just sold one recently and I was blown away by some of the upgrades that are in these semi-detached. I mean, they really tricked them out. Beautiful, beautiful property. So, you know, you could get into that, a home that has got just as much space as living in suburbia, but being able to be in a walkable neighborhood. And the market is showing us that that is some strength, and I think that's going to continue. All right, let's go into row houses. Now, the demand here, the absorption rate has gone down a little bit. And I'll tell you what's happened here. They just built a ton of these. You know, it was only a few years ago, we came out of COVID, and there wasn't enough of these row houses available. And the prices were pretty darn good on them. I mean, you could get into them in the 300s and it was pretty good. But all of a sudden, it just got this huge demand, and the builders responded. And of course, you know, they love to build multifamily because there's more profit in it. But in my opinion, they built a little bit too many, and now the demand has started to waver, and there's been some price softening. So we're just touching right now on a buyer's market for these. So if you are in the market for one of these, there's some real good value. And I will tell you, the builders too, they want to unload some of that inventory. So there's some opportunities here, and I think you can get yourself a pretty good deal. $422,300 is the benchmark price. That's down 0.14% from last month. It's down 6.43% from a year ago. See what I'm talking about? The demand came down, so did the prices. Now, if we move down over here to this chart, there's 1,173 for sale. Only 350 of them are sold. So you can see there's a little bit more motivation for the people that want to get rid of them. And when people are motivated, the prices drop. Also, the average days on market goes up. And if we come down to market distribution, well, there's the story. Interesting. $400,000 to $500,000. So he dropped that other $100,000. But here's the thing I like about townhouses. They offer a lot of options. The people that buy them quite often are first-time buyers, people who have gone through a divorce, you know, people are maybe just a young couple just starting out. It's affordable, but you walk up to your own door. A lot of them have garages. A lot of them have basements. Or some of the newer ones, you just come in the front door and you go all the way upstairs, or like 3-story. So there's quite a bit of space. Some of them even have 2-car garages in the back. You know, so there's a real wide variety of different products that you can get in. And you know what? They're building these all over the city. So it doesn't matter what neighborhood you want to move into. You can find one of these, and they're affordable. But you'll also notice, you know, when you go to that $500,000 to $600,000 range, it just drops off a cliff. I mean, the demand just isn't there. It's not as high as that 400 to 500. So you can see this is very, very price driven. So that's where you want to be. If you're going to buy one of these as an investment, or maybe it's going to be your home that you're going to start with, try to get good value. If you can pick something up in the low 4s, you're going to be okay, because it's a property that you'll be able to make a little bit of money on in the future, but easy to sell if you pick it up at the right price. That's the key. Don't pay too much. See, as I mentioned earlier about the buyers, they never want to pay too much. Now, move to condos. This story is a little more bleak. Sorry if you are a condominium owner, an apartment condominium owner. The market has changed. It's shifted. It's just not what it was 2 years ago. We're into a buyer's market. Only 19.5% of the condos listed have sold. So you know, if you want to sell your condo right now in Calgary, on average, now I'm not saying for every condo, because by the way, I was actually just in a competing offer recently on a condo in Cliff Bungalow, and it actually sold for more than the asking price. So not every condo is down. But they have built a lot of the high rises, and there's a lot of extra inventory. It just depends on where it is and what it is. But overall, we have a softening market. 300,400 is the benchmark price. That's down 0.33% from last month. It's down a whopping 9% from a year ago. If you go down to the hard numbers, you can see here, 2,070 listed, only 400 have sold. So if you're going to sell your condo in this market, I'm going to tell you, you got to do everything right. And it starts with the right price. And it's probably going to have to be an aggressive price. But if you have a very, very typical condo where there is a lot of them that are similar, a lot of competition. I've seen some buildings where there's 5, 6 same condos for sale. It can be somewhat of a race to the bottom, and you have to really think about whether you should hang on or not hang on. These are tough decisions to make, and you should have someone like me give you some guidance on that as to what your options are and what you consider doing. But if you've got a unique condo that there's not a lot of them around, something that's got something interesting and different, location, the floor plan, you probably will do okay. And you need, again, some good direction on where you should be positioned to sell that. 46 days on average it takes to sell a condo, and you can see the sweet spot is $200,000 to $300,000. There's a lot of people that want to get into a condo in that price range. And that is still good news when you really put it in that perspective, because you think about major cities in Canada. You know, even though the condo market in Toronto is not doing very well, you cannot get condos in Toronto for that price. Even in this market, you certainly can't get it in Vancouver. And Calgary arguably is the third largest city in Canada. So to have condominiums in that price range, that's still pretty good value. Now, let's just talk about what I think the future is going to bring. Even though nobody, including me, has the crystal ball, although I wish I did, because I wouldn't be doing this video. I'd be sitting on an island somewhere. The fact is, I can see by this data, and I can feel, you know, I'm in the business, I live it and breathe it every day, and I can feel how the wind is blowing. And I'll tell you, things do look good for Alberta. I can see what's going on. We still have the highest net migration of any province in Canada. People want to live here. It's still an affordable place. I even just read an article about the top 16 cities that people are moving to in Canada, and Calgary came in top of the list. It's not a surprise. You got to think about the economics, but you also have to think about the lifestyle of what it offers. I mean, look at us right now. I'm standing I'm sitting here in Canmore. I got mountains in the background. That's only an hour from Calgary. That lifestyle is what people look for, in addition to affordability and the economics. Everything looks good for Alberta. There's a lot of things happening, and it's not just oil and gas. We're a very diverse province. So my prediction is, as we come into June, I think we're still going to see some very strong demand in the detached section and the semi-detached. It's going to take a little while for the apartment condos to get back on track. I don't know if it'll happen this year. It's probably going to be a tougher year for condos this year. Row houses, I think, will improve slightly. But if you're in a position to get into a semi-detached or a detached home, I'm telling you right here in this video today, you should start looking for a home right now. Hope that's helpful. We're going to see you all next month.